That's why we love tutoring. So, my lovely friends, one more session to go. And I really do have... I'm going to have to separate you. Sugar. This is the graveyard shift, right? Oh, you didn't give them blue M&Ms, right?
The red ones.
So. Now I've got my mummy hat back on. And I think you'll have noticed that it shifted through the day because there was a school leadership quality assurance conversation, and there was I'm a tutor, make sure I feel safe conversation. But now we're coming full circle and we're saying, what do our children need? What do our students need? Adult learners as well. What do they need from us to be that reflective, responsible practitioner? So you may or may not know that alongside the Love Tutoring community, the other beautiful thing that Qualified Tutor has created is digital credentials. And the reason why we've done that is because, as Helen said before, we need to teach parents to check who we are, where we're coming from, what we know, what we can do. We need to teach parents that we are professionals with a range of professional skills and knowledge, and we need to advocate for that definition of excellence together. We believe that a digital credential is the way to do that. Why? Because it means so much more than a one-off certificate. It's speaking to lifelong learning, lots and lots of different training that I've been on, all visible in one place together. And because it's robust, it's on the blockchain, which Odette knows what that means, I don't. But what's perfect about that is it's not a PDF that anybody can copy, adapt, or upload. We're talking about something that is a meaningful quality mark. Now, going back to that moment of clarity when my three hats aligned for me to see what it is that students, parents, and tutors need, it came down to a quality mark. It came down to an understanding that a tutor is a professional that doesn't yet have a language of professionalism. And when I buy fair trade chocolate, I know that it's fair trade and I know what that means because I recognize the stamp. When I buy light bulbs with a BSI kite mark on them, I know it's not likely to explode. I need to know that the resource that I'm investing in this case tutoring, is the right resource. And if it's not, I need to know that too. Famously, we were at an event last year where somebody in the audience said, what is the difference between a £5 tutor and a £50 tutor? Gasp, gasp. And the person sitting next to me on the panel said, branding. Double gasp. Yeah, because we are not a commodity. We are professionals. And yes, marketing is how we put ourselves out there, but our marketing has to be much, much closer aligned with what our professional expertise means in order for a parent to make a decision to invest in a tutor. So we were talking about myths and misconceptions, and we were talking about how a parent understands how to work with a tutor. And I firmly believe that it's got to be about digital credentials and a voice, the vision of lifelong learning. What I'm going to ask you to look at now is this framework. The International Tutoring Framework is something that we've created to combine safe, skilled, and supported with relationship, responsiveness, and reflectiveness. And whilst I mostly speak to why, here I'm speaking to how. So we've done a lot of big thinking today. But that big thinking is going to come down to safer recruitment. It's going to come down to access to training. It's going to come down to effective teaching tools. Because really, when your boots are on and you're on the ground, you need to know exactly what resources your tutors have to deploy to do a wonderful job with those students. And the resources will be different for Nudge than they will for the profs or for Gaia Learning. The resources will be different, but the commitment is the same. The commitment to professionalism and professional integrity. So what I'm introducing you to here is a framework of becoming QT certified. And that is something that we can do as independent practitioners, and we can do it as companies. It will go way beyond the framework of the National Tutoring Programme and way beyond the framework of tutoring in the UK. It is intentionally international because tutors are working across time zones in other countries, and tutors abroad are supporting our students over here. So in order for that to happen, we need to not say DBS and CRB, we need to say safer recruitment and unpack what that means. So behind each of these points, there's a heck of a lot of thinking, and I'm happy to do more of it with you. And what I'd like to invite you to do now is to evaluate and discuss this framework and how it relates to the way that you're working today. What I will be creating and sharing with you over the next few days will be an audit so that you can actually evaluate your own company and your own practices to see how safe, skilled, supported you are in building relationships, responsiveness, and reflectiveness. So this is your first, I love her. This is your first preview of the QT certification, and I'd love to know what it looks like to you. Go ahead. Thoughts, questions, insights? Come on, Georgina.
Pause. There you go.
Okay.
There you go. I've had a breath. That's amazing. I love it. I mean, it's pretty much a summary of today, isn't it? We've had some amazing conversations. Everyone's shared beautiful insights where essentially they're all on the same page. They're just saying the same thing in different ways. And you've just put it into a lovely scientific, logical grid and made my day.
No one's called me logical before. I'm not sure what to do with that. Lovely, scientific and logical. What else can I see? Yes, go ahead. Helen and then Florence. I'm doing lists. I'm doing my list. Last list of the day.
I'm waiting for the list to go up, just so I can see my name. I'm not self-centered at all.
And you're in pink today.
Ooh, pink! That clashes with my hair. I'm loving the way that several of the boxes or things in the boxes do overlap. We talked about things that being a responsible overall, being responsive is also going to relate to reflectiveness. Being safe is going to connect to being skilled. So I can see safeguarding training in 3 off the top of my head, and leadership in a couple of others. I can see peer, mentor, and support, which we've talked about, especially for independent tutors. We don't have the agency behind us. Connecting and working with others is in several of those boxes. It's not like it's a tick box. I need to get all 9 boxes. There's stuff in each of them that if you are doing safeguarding training, actually you've done some for all of it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And what's gorgeous is it makes as much sense to you at Osmond Education as I'm hoping Florence is going to tell us now in my tutor. So go ahead.
Looks very sensible. I was interested.
Sensible and logical.
I'm
going home.
I think the idea of being able to audit, like do some self-audit and self-reflection, I think is really useful. You mentioned the NTP framework, and I think a good evolution about this year is that it has been more of like a reflection activity. We have actually found that a useful framework versus like a punitive thing, which has been very useful. I was actually a little bit interested in some of your thought process. Was there anything that you wrestled with that didn't end up on here, or something that you know nearly made this shortlist but didn't quite, or was
That's
it quite clear for
glorious
you
question.
as to
Thank
what was
you
on
so
here?
much. I tell you where it landed with us. It was about tools. It was about teaching tools and understanding where they fall into skilled and supported, and understanding how different tutors will hop between different resources or deploy different resources in different contexts, and how, I mean, especially because, well, we have action tutoring here. We were talking before, Jen and Johnny and Richard were talking about more prescriptive approaches and less prescriptive approaches. And I think that understanding that and matching effective teaching tools to the profile of the tutor is certainly something that we haven't quite nailed yet. But I think that that's because we really are in a great area that's blending tech. And so I think that that's a really interesting one. Is there anything that for you stood out as a grey area or as a surprise or missing?
No, I'm not enough to read it that quickly.
It is in your workbook.
No, I was just interested. I would quite like to read it, like knowing where you had like your tough decisions or just in terms of
Can I just add something? Sorry. With the, I have a background in training and development, so working with QT. Sorry. I have a range of background, but part of my background is in training and development. And when we started to look at EdTech and AI and all these things that are coming, we started to discuss around, let's be more prescriptive. And then we said, no, we can't put DBS on here because DBS is for UK. We're not going to put EdTech on here because actually, if I'm working with a child that can't access that and is better off using the fidget toys and working on pen and paper. I'm just sat next to Tia today, who uses a paper diary. I didn't know anyone still used a paper diary, but it's being able to evidence that the way you run your tutoring business, whether as an independent or as a tutoring business, you have effective teaching tools. Show the evidence that you have it, you get marked. It's a yes, you're certified. But it's really important, and it was very intentional when this framework came together, that we were broad to make it inclusive. And that with the International Tutoring Framework, very nearly became Inclusive Tutoring Framework. And that's where we had a big discussion around the naming of it, because it's inclusive. It's not just for a tutoring business or for an independent. It's inclusive of everybody.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. I love it. I think it's a great tool to have. I think anyone would be proud to be able to display a quality mark such as that, and quite thorough. But the thing that's really resonated with me, and it's probably because I've had a lot of conversations about this with tutors in the last couple of months, access to a career pathway. There's either a real big demand for it or not at all with the team that we're working with at the moment, because some people have come to us because they are looking for a route towards retirement, but they're not quite there yet. So they might be teachers that have come out of the classroom and looking for that contact still, but not necessarily thinking about the career pathway. But we've got quite a few really passionate mathematicians that are teachers that have come out of the classroom for various reasons. It might be personal, it might be the system, and they're looking because they're ambitious and they know they're great at the job. Where do we go now? What's
Awesome.
next?
Perfect, because it's access. As long as you've got access for those that want it, then that's fine.
Yeah.
So let me tell you.
pathway.
Let me tell you a bit about pathways, and Lucy, you've heard me talk about this before. Sheryl Sandberg, in her book Lean In, says that careers are no longer ladders. They're like climbing frames. You go backwards, forwards, sideways, and wherever you go, there's a different view, and that's really interesting too. And that process and that freedom of being able to go back, to go forwards and recalibrate is a really, really beautiful thing. And there was a lot of conversation in the tutoring summit that we went to, where we were talking together about how tutors and teachers can hop from one track to the other. We've spoken about that as well. I met last week with Dame Alison Peacock from the Chartered College of Teaching, and that's because Adrian and I are developing a chartered teacher route for tutors. So if you have 3 years in the classroom, you are eligible to continue that route of becoming a chartered teacher, which is not becoming, you know, we have this problem in teaching, don't we, that everybody who's good at teaching gets pushed out of the classroom and into leadership. Oh, the irony, right? But they don't want to be, they want to do a wonderful job. So all of these things are speaking to this opportunity to understand that tutors are teaching in a different delivery model, and therefore, if they can continue their expertise rather than having to jettison it when they leave the classroom, case in point, then you've got this opportunity to actually step forward or sideways from teaching to tutoring. And I have this vision of a teacher going into their head teacher and saying, I'm nearly at burnout. Second me to the tutoring department. Let me do things differently for a while. Let me rest, build up my well-being, and come back and be a teacher for you in a classroom again. Why not? It's the same skills. You can go backwards and forwards and sideways. Thank you so much for pulling that out. I really appreciate it. Sorry. Helen, Andrea, and then Kirsten, and then Adrian to finish us off.
Johnny has as well.
Okay, that's good because Tia needs a few more steps on her step.
Yeah, I think it's great. I really do. A few things I wondered if you considered. One is around qualifications and whether qualifications would be included of some sort. And the second thing, and it's where it says effective teaching tools, I would change that to effective delivery tools.
Ooh. Why?
Just because it's not all about teaching. When we're talking about a lot of the work that tutors do, especially with the kind of learners that we work with, it's not all about teaching tools, it's more about delivery tools.
So you're saying delivery is a more inclusive word?
Yes.
Thank you, that's lovely. That's really lovely.
And more international.
Next time you look at it, it'll say that. Thank you. Lucy, are you on my list? Are you?
You never answered my question, which was about qualifications.
Yes. Yes. We'll have lots of conversations about that, about the apprenticeship route, about building up small qualifications, about a level 4 and a level 5 on top of our level 3, about the chartered route also, and understanding all these different steps, but crucially, and we were just talking about this in the break, a really low barrier to entry. Yeah. We want 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old tutors to have as much skill and support as they possibly can do and keep the door open for them. We were talking before, Ben, about the people who surprise you as awesome tutors when they come from a hospitality background, yeah? Keep the barrier for entry low and let them get the access that they need.
I love that idea. What I like about this is that I was looking at it because I straddle both mainstream education and tuition. I was looking at it with different hats on, and what I liked first of all was the personalised specific skills. So I was looking at things that could be a strength for me within those boxes. As well, I was thinking that, you know, the way that you were talking about how we would share practice and how we can support each other. But then also I was thinking this actually echoes what Lucy mentioned earlier about speaking to schools and including schools in this dialogue. And it was interesting that you'd spoken to Alison Peacock about involving, you know, the Chartered College of Teaching. And I think a lot of this does speak to schools because there's so much, I mean, schools get a good bashing, but I work with a lot of senior leaders and there's a lot of vision and ideas in schools that I think can be shared across the spectrum of teaching and tuition. And in here, I do see a lot of where, you know, professionals in schools, professionals in tuition can actually work together to help sort of deliver this.
The coaching delivery.
The coaching and looking at career pathways and things like that, that educators can get on board, and it adds a certain flexibility between tuition and teaching that I think hasn't existed until now. So I think it's, you know, got legs.
Thanks,
definitely.
Love. Pass the mic to the left.
I love the global ambition of it and the international thing. I get as well that you're looking at it in the UK because tutoring does occupy sort of the spaces that the other institutions don't. So it's nice that it includes all of that, and that we are reaching kids everywhere and allowing the education to go with them when they travel, which is great. I also think what's so surprising, so I grew up in South Africa, educated here for a bit, started my career in Australia, and then I've come back here. And what I found so frustrating is that I took some GCSEs to Australia and a first class degree on all the stuff, and they said, we don't understand what that is. You start at the bottom, you're nothing really. If you don't have a badge that is recognized by somebody, it's irrelevant. So I think another thing I've noticed for us delivering the international Cambridge curriculum is it is so well respected overseas, but not so much, in the UK. So for an international tutoring mark like this to come out of the UK, I think it's wonderful as well. But for it to be recognized globally, I also think what's amazing being in this space compared to being on LinkedIn is that it's a very small global community. And even, having started a career in Australia, it's people, I don't know, the world is very small and people come up again and again and again. So I think this is absolutely wonderful and will very quickly be recognized and by people around the world. The other thing I find running a business is people with the career pathways discussion is, I find it's a term for it, isn't it? Like fractional careers, where I'm now recruiting for a CTO and a CFO, but I can't afford one all the
Portfolio?
time.
No.
Hey?
No, sorry, go ahead.
But people doing different things. A lot of our tutors are professional singers or have acting careers or other things, which makes them really, really engaging for students. Yes. But for 2 days a week, they are tutors. So being able to so it's not necessarily a pathway, but being able to switch between.
Yes.
And one last thing on your point about when you're a good practitioner, you get leveled up to leadership. I think that's something that I will always maintain, is I will always tutor and teach the kids to know that whatever we're delivering is accessible for the kid, the parent, the mission, as well as running a business and doing the other bits. I think what a career is being completely redefined, and why shouldn't we have it all and be able to do all that? But I want that.
You can have it. see me after class.
And then our conversation that we're having, I'll just make sure we discuss you becoming QTs then.
Lucy, go for it.
I just had, two things. I think first of all, just thinking about that collaboration between the tutoring industry and, schools, apprenticeship providers, it's not just about schools, it's about adult education as well. And I think that, the work we do with like the NAHT and Twinkle, where we support the ECTs coming into schools as well, I think we'd take this to them and they'd get it. And I think I struggle to see, at the moment, I still feel, there's so much amazing work going on with tutoring in schools and, NTP and alternative provision, which I know is really well represented in this room. But I think there's still this like slight disconnect, which does just take time, like all these good stories of, like we talk about referrals between schools. I think that takes a little bit of time to go, oh yeah, like we got, I've passed Johnny on to a couple of my clients recently for NTP, because we don't do NTP. And we're getting so much more alternative provision because we introduced someone who has solved that problem, and then we're continuing to solve the other problem. And I love that. So I think this would really resonate with the way they work. And then the only other little thing I thought was, when we were talking about the delivery, I wondered about just like learning tools, because delivery still gives me that impression of like you're delivering it, you're like passing it on from the knowledge giver to the knowledge receiver, and I don't love that so much. So I just wondered if it maybe could be learning tools instead.
Thank you. We love these conversations. We're wrapping up now. We're having Johnny, we're having Adrian, who's going to tell us two things: what they're saying on the group and what he feels. And then I will wrap you up and send you home.
It wasn't going to be my point, but I think there's so much contention over it. You're just going to have effective tools. And make it
Are we allowed tools?
I think you're just effective. My point was going to be like, I'm thrilled by this. This looks fantastic. I mean, I've been living in a state of slight anxiety that we've had in terms of the national tuition program. This accreditation that's come about, and everyone's up their game. I mean, we thought we were doing great because we were already working with schools, and some of them were very demanding about what we had to do for them. And then EEF, pushed that bar even higher, and then keeping children safe in education is pushing it higher and higher every year. I feel that we're doing more than schools are doing, in fact. And I think last year it was quite a kick in the teeth when school-led tutoring grants said, oh, you don't have to use one of those accredited companies. You can use anyone that doesn't have the safeguarding or the GDPR or... So I've been wondering about what's going to happen post-NTP. Obviously, there's only one more year of it. And then suddenly is it going back to what Gavin Williamson described as the Wild West? Hopefully not. I'd like to see accreditation in place. And hopefully this is it.
Thank you.
Please.
I look forward to working with you. Thank you. You know what my answer to Wild West is now? Because I don't use that phrase Wild West because it is not very friendly. Pioneering, that's what we are.
Thank you very much. We've got a couple of friends over in the US. They love it because it is an international thing and it
Nice.
appeals to them as well, which is great. And Margaret was saying about the, it's a different approach to education. It's a different, the fact that you can move in different ways. My own take on it, and I'm gonna illustrate my understanding of it by showing my stupidity first of all, because I've seen loads of audits go ahead and carried out loads of audits, and the problem is that with audits is they are a linear process, and what audits tend to do is show up what you can't do, and this is turned it on its head because it's showing what you can do. And the fact that you can slot into lots of those different boxes and identify where the gaps are, but also celebrating the positives. And I think that's a really important thing because the strength of the work going on in the tutoring industry is unbelievable, and it's not really celebrated that much. And it needs to happen more. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to ask you to do 3 things, please. The first is I'm going to ask you to speak with me about how to get QT certified in your organization, because we have to jumpstart this change together. The second thing is I'm going to ask you to save the date for Love Tutoring Festival 4, which is the last week of June, culminating in the TTA Awards, and then on the Sunday as well, Tutors Day. So we've got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of programming, TTA Awards on Friday night, Sunday as well, Tutors Day. Should be an awesome few days. And the last thing is this. I'd like you to please stay connected with each other. Collective tutor efficacy is only at its beginnings, but we can really make change together. Thank you so much for participating in this session. Thank you.